But it's been so good. Lord, it's been so good. Lord, it's been good. God has had my back in the midst of my enemy. Now He even has to be there. I have grown in His spirit, free and justice. Oh, God took care of me. I'm so connected. Peace and blessings. Once again, we find ourselves here at the noonday hour. And of course, we are grateful that each of you have paused and carved out some time to gather with us. And as usual, I bring you greetings from the president of the National Alumni Association, that being Mr. Jerry Redmond, as well as the president of the university, Dr. Gerald Briggs. And of course, my name is Reverend Anthony J. Brownlow, and I am the national chaplain. Well, folks, this week, of course, our topic is God is watching and working. And the supporting text for this week's theme is Esther, the 6th chapter, verses 1 through 3. And the text reads as follows. On that night, the king could not sleep, and he gave orders to bring the book of records, the annals, and they were read to the king. It was found written how Mordecai had told about Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's eunuchs who guarded the threshold and who had conspired to assassinate King Ahasuerus. Then the king said, "What honor or distinction has been bestowed on Mordecai for this?" The king's servant who attended him said, "Nothing has been done for him." Folks, once again, this week's topic, God is watching and working. And the supporting text is Esther, the 6th chapter, verses 1 through 3. Well, folks, this is, of course, a very rich text in itself. But to put some context around this particular text, one would have to back up to chapters 3 and 4. And there you will find, just as in verse chapter 6, someone delivering a message to the king. But the difference between the message in the 6th chapter and the message in the 3rd and 4th chapters are extremely, on two different ends of the spectrum. Well, folks, what we have in the 3rd chapter is an oppressive message, and not an oppressive or crushing message, as Haman, one of the key characters in the midst of this particular segment of the text, is sharing with King Ahasuerus that the Jews are these terrible people and they need to be annihilated. And Mordecai gets word or wind of this, and it puts him in a frenzy because the edict that will come out is one to destroy the entire Jewish community in all locales of the kingdom. Well, folks, but when you ease on over to chapter 6, that's not the same tone and tenor of the message that you receive. In fact, it is one of liberation, right? Of course, because the king gets liberated because of the plot of two of his eunuchs. But not only that, Mordecai gets liberated. And so it is amazing how, in fooling around with God, you can have multiple experiences almost in the same framework, right? And so that's what I wanted us to do right in this moment, to understand that not only is God watching, God is also working. And what's really beautiful about this is, of course, in the book of Esther, Esther is a key figure. And, if you're not familiar with her name, it actually means to hide, right? And so here in the midst of this story, Esther is hidden because no one realizes that she is a Jew. And she's queen at the time, of course. And so I would like to plug in, I'll put a plug in this moment. I don't know what season you find yourself in as we are in the opening stanzas of 2025, but I'd like to remind you, hey, that not only is God watching and working, man, God has some blessings that are hidden in your story. And so that's the dope thing about fooling and dealing with God. Because in one segment of your story, the picture can be painted as oppressive or crushing, right? And chapters 3 and 4 kind of illuminate that. But here in the midst of this particular story, hey, or in the 6th chapter, we find a message, a liberation to the king, and liberation to actually Mordecai, where Mordecai in the 3rd and 4th chapter was wailing and doing things where he thought that the story or his story was about to come to an end. The God that we serve has placed Esther in the midst of his circumstance as a vehicle to kind of act as a liberation tool. And so I want us to think about that too, as we, operate in this space called the living enterprise, to kind of look at the geography or the terrain of our very existence. And I would suggest to you that there are some liberating elements that we have in our story as well. That although we may be feeling like we are oppressed, or we might be feeling like we're crushed, which is what Mordecai's name literally means, to be oppressed or crushed. But I want to emphasize in this moment that God has hidden something in the backdrop of your story that will liberate you and elevate you in a manner that your heart and mind could never imagine. And so, what's beautiful also, as we, kind of close out this segment of our time together, it speaks of how the king could not sleep. And I think, it's reference to how the king solicits, the annals of the records, like historical, documents of the times. And he learns of what Mordecai has done for him. And he asks, what have we done for Mordecai? Right. And folks, I think, sometimes if we consider our history, right, our history almost can be that answer or that solution or that reference point to let us know, hey, man, God is getting ready to do a new thing because God is watching and God is working in the midst of our story. Folks, that being said, let us prepare our hearts and minds for a word of prayer. To the merciful one that we serve daily, who has rained down love on us in this very hour, we are grateful and we're thankful for the gifts that have shown up at our addresses, in the spaces we reside in, and the venues we find ourselves visiting. God, we are so thankful that you hear our outcries in seasons when life seems disruptive, oppressive, or so much like crushing. And so, God, we are thankful that we have a God that does not have a deaf ear when we cry out in protest to our particular concerns. But in the same vein, God, we are blessed and thankful that you will slide an agent of liberation in our story to liberate us from whatever that seems to be paralyzing our hearts and minds, or that seems to accost us in some form of enslavement, Lord. That being, problem, obstacles, health concerns, or whatever. God, you, because you watch and you work, Lord, you will slide a different variable into our equation that will cause us to be liberated. And for that, God, we're grateful. And God, but in the same vein, we recognize and we praise, or we pause for a moment of praise as well as petition. God, we lift up the Carter family in their season of bereavement. But not only the Carter family, God, we also lift up the Clarks. And God, we ask you also to visit that hospital space for Deacon Crawford's mother. We're grateful for, of course, those three families. We ask, Lord, that your peace and your love visit the two who are finding themselves in the season of death and bereavement. But God, we also ask that you visit that hospital space and be the healer that you are. Speak to those healthcare providers and guide and direct them in how they should take care of Deacon Crawford's mother. God, I have no idea of what all the individuals who are here in the midst of this call with us. I don't know what they're dealing with. I don't know the concerns of everyone's heart, but God, you do. And so, God, this is my plea that you go to the space, you hear the concerns of their hearts, you keep them company in whatever season that they find themselves in. And God, you speak quietly, reminding them that not only are you watching, you're also working. God, we ask these things in your name. Amen. Folks, it has been a blessing to be right here with you at the noonday hour. Grateful once again to have this opportunity to pause and to put forth words of praise and petition to the God we serve. And as we bring this time together to a close, as I do always remind you to keep asking, to keep seeking, and to keep knocking. The God we serve is not in the business of having a deaf ear to your particular concerns. Therefore, I look forward to seeing each of you right back here, same time, same place next week. Be blessed.